The City Council is set to approve the legislation of electric bikes and scooters in New York City on Thursday. The bill would authorize bicycles with electric motors that can travel up to 25 miles per hour and scooters that can travel up to 20 miles per hour. What does this mean for the city? Sara from Embolden Adventures joins me to unpack this. Sara, how does this
Hey,
impact the future? Hey, Sara, let's get into this. Thank you for joining me, first of all. That's the first thing I should have said to you. I appreciate you taking time to do this with me. How does this impact the future of the city?
well, I think this is a great thing. As you know, Carl, I've been riding my electric scooter around New York City for over 3 years. So I was kind of one of the first movers in this, evolution that is electric rides. My scooter is, I'm on my second version of it now. It's more powerful. The battery lasts longer. It has more strength to get up hills. But I think what I've seen over the past 3 years, I've used it mainly to commute to get to Penn Station. I live in Midtown Manhattan, and getting to Penn Station in the mornings actually turned out to be a bit of a hassle from where I am all the way on the east side, getting down to like where Penn Station is diagonal on the west side. The subway actually is a lot longer than me taking an electric scooter. So it turned out to actually improve my commute time dramatically. Also, on the back end, I take the New Jersey Transit out to, at that time, my office is in New Jersey, and I take the scooter up the hill without having to worry about taxi fares. So all in all, I think the future of commuting is going to be that last mile. People here in the city get around by subway, they get around by, Uber or whatever, four wheels, buses. But I think we're seeing, the advent of all these different types of e-rides around the city evolving, not just scooters, but skateboards and electric unicycles, which are known as EUCs, one wheels, and others. So I think you're going to see more and more people taking kind of a personalized option that is electrified and quite fast. So, with the new bike lanes that the city's been installing for the past few years now, protected bike lanes, nonetheless, the scooter has a lot of mobility. It gets you from point A to point B much quicker. And it's easy to port. Like I take it with me on trains. I can, fold it up. I take it with me to the bars and the restaurants. It's easy to put in the trunk of a taxi sometimes if I want to drive home, and I don't want to take the scooter at night. So it's very mobile. It's a great option. I think it's just one of many, personalized options, including like City Bike too, that people are opting to use as well. It's a variety of choice out here in New York in terms of getting around in the city, and I really think scooters are a way to go. A lot more people have them than ever before.
I've been seeing them everywhere around the city, and they are quite portable. Let me ask you this, though. This battle has been going on for a decade. Why so long to get something like this enacted?
See, I don't know. I didn't realize it was going on for a decade. I would think 10 years ago, so what is that, 2010, the technology just wasn't there. I work in the renewable energy industry, and I've been seeing the evolution of, solar and wind and battery technology. And, back in 2010 was a different era. In just 10 years, we've gone from what technology was to what technology is, and it's just lightning speed in terms of improvements and, the kind of the strength of batteries and whatnot. I mean, even think about it, like in 2010 is when Tesla introduced their Roadster. So Tesla's only really been around for 10 years. And then last year, Elon Musk shot an electric car into the solar system. So, a lot's happened in a very short period of time, if you think about 10 years being short in the grand scheme of things. So I would think back then we weren't ready, just from a technology perspective. But also, we didn't have the bike lanes. It was dangerous to ride, around the city, even 10 years ago. City Bike was not even around. People didn't really have this as an option, or it wasn't even an idea yet for, the everyday person. So, like I said, I think this is evolving, just as, the bigger kind of picture has evolved in terms of technology. So now it makes a ton of sense because, as I mentioned, I'm on my second kind of version, new and improved model of my scooter, and it's so much more powerful than it was even 3 years ago. So, in 3 short years, scootering and skateboards and other sort of e-rides have really kind of exploded in terms of popularity, durability, and just ease of use. It's really cool, actually.
Now, expanding on the ease of use and the other items you mentioned, there has to be an environmental benefit to this. Could you expand on this?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it obviously takes the place of driving a car, so your carbon footprint is reduced from that perspective. You can charge now with cleaner options. Coal power plants here in New York State are being taken offline and being replaced by a lot of solar. I mean, again, I work in the renewable energy industry, in particular here in New York State, and there's so much now in terms of renewable energy that's being put on the grid. And so, like offshore wind, even is a big kind of something coming, down the pike here in New York and New Jersey. 19 gigawatts of wind potential. So you're now charging, your electrons are now greener from that perspective. So you're charging your scooter, you're plugging it into the wall, you're getting it from a greener source. You're not using a car. It's just as like you use a bus or a subway. It's kind of the mass mobility and then the individuality of the scooter, together I think are a big benefit to reducing our greenhouse gas footprints.
Now, let's look outside of New York City. Has this worked in other cities?
See, this is interesting. I'm part of this kind of e-ride group around the city. All of us are big enthusiasts of like different kinds of skateboards and different kind of like tech stuff that kind of comes along with riding. And we talk a lot about this because we're all from different walks of life, all like various ages, from like 15 years old in high school to like past 50s and 60s. So it's a huge range of people who are very interested, and we just love to ride around the city. It's a lot of fun. But we talked about this, and one of my friends like thinks New York is a really great place for this to exist because of the grid, the way that the streets and the avenues are aligned. We're a walking city, we're a mobile city as it is, less cars, more foot traffic. So this works in New York, even in the winter. Like my battery actually can last in the cold, and while I won't take it out, in the snow or where the slush is, I have taken my scooter year round, and that goes for everyone on skateboards or whatever. But I can't really speak for the other cities. I mean, maybe like places like that are warm, like in California along the beach, although there are issues. And I personally disagree with, the ride share, because people just leave it around and there aren't docking stations like they have in City Bike where you can, put them into a docking station and it's more orderly, and you can charge it too. That would be a great solution in my opinion. But in terms of other cities, unlike New York, people are very car dependent. And I do notice a difference when I went from New York City to like, the suburbs of New Jersey where my office was. The sidewalks aren't there. People drive at 60 miles an hour, right? Like people aren't used to seeing people on bikes in suburbia. So, places like in Florida or in Texas, like, people are getting hit because they're on their bikes. So I don't know if it's a good idea elsewhere beyond New York. I'm sure if they start adding protected bike lanes and really making a serious kind of push for people to embrace bicycle kind of culture, I think it will be a great idea. And it begs the question, like, are scooters belonging on the sidewalk or do they belong in the street? So that's another kind of big question that I think, a bike lane better addresses. I mean, I travel around, the United States, I travel around the world. Embolden Adventures, you'll see, you see me going around the world here. But yeah, I mean, some places are better for bike culture and scooter culture than others. Like take, for instance, the Netherlands, right, in Amsterdam. That's very bike friendly. Dallas, Texas, maybe not. So I'd like to see, America embrace it because it's healthier. You're outside. I mean, if you're just riding a bike, it's good for your health. It's a great way to exercise. It gets you out in the fresh air. All these things are great. But I will say though that like I follow some kind of influencers on Instagram that are electric unicycle riders, EUCs, and you're starting to see, well, you know, New York City is a big kind of hub for this EUC community, you know, more so than anywhere else in the world. And a lot of people I ride with are like world influencers, which is really interesting. But you do see other examples in like Russia and in like, I follow someone in Lebanon in the Middle East. There's someone in Austria who rides the EUC. So you're seeing some of this happening in Europe as well. I don't see a lot of it in South America. I don't see a lot of it in Asia, although these EUCs come from Asia, China directly. One thing I'm interested in doing along with Embolden Adventures is getting some of my friends who are part of this group that I belong to, and some of them are really into like camera work and doing videos on YouTube. PopSignature is one I'd give a shout out to. He does a really good job, and you can see us riding, me included, on the scooter around New York City. One idea I'm kind of considering is like planning a trip and figuring out how we're going to bring our stuff on a plane or getting it shipped in advance. And then we do some like footage about us like riding around in like places around the world. So that's an idea I'm kind of toying with right now. But I definitely think it can work in other cities. It can work around the world if there's, I think, protections and, you know, cars are more aware of kind of this culture coexisting with the streets.
And I will say this, one thing I noticed going to the West Coast cities, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, you see these e-scooters everywhere just laying around. And like you mentioned earlier, they're not being docked properly. And, you know, that is something to consider. One thing I will say, part of this bill would require city bike style e-scooter share program, kind of like City Bike. Would there be a demand for this type of program similar to City Bike?
I think so. So I actually, it's funny you bring this up because I took it upon myself to write a letter to my city councilman, Ben Callos, because I live sort of in the Upper East Side area, and that's his jurisdiction. I was motivated to write him a letter about scooters about a year or so ago. And, you know, I actually read the letter to him during his town hall, and I brought my scooter, and at the time it was illegal, so I took the chance. But I explained why scooters are really important and why I really think it's valuable. But at the same time, I advocated for docking stations. I advocated for, you know, them to be charged docking stations, right? Because there are reasons in New York why this won't make sense to just leave it around. And personally, I think if people start getting really angry that this is kind of littering the streets, the rest of us are going to like suffer, you know, those that are, you know, taking their scooters and being responsible with them as a personal, you know, you personally own your own. Like, I don't want to kind of get looped in with like the negative backlash and then get penalized as a result. But I think in the case of New York, like think about it, we have blizzards sometimes, it snows a lot. Like when the plows are coming out, like they cover all the stuff on the sidewalk with like the snow mounds. So like you got these scooters coming in, you know, getting covered in snow, you know, you got dogs potentially peeing on them. The sidewalks are really narrow, like people may trip over them. You know, people may like drop them in the slush puddles in February. So like, if anything, it's actually going to be a detriment to the companies because it's going to be more of a cost to them to fix and replace. So I think it makes a ton of sense for it to be better managed through a docking station solution rather than just being laid around. But, you know, I think ultimately people will accept it. I know like some people have asked me about, I don't know, a year ago or so, they were, they didn't do this, but they were contemplating shutting down the L train, the subway between Williamsburg in Brooklyn to like 14th Street along downtown Manhattan. And that's a huge, they call it the Hipster Express because everyone moved out to Williamsburg and Greenpoint. They take the L train to get into the city. And it's a huge, heavily commuted line. And they were going to shut it down for a year for construction and like just do like massive kind of, you know, buses that go back and forth all day long. And that got people nervous in Brooklyn. They were like, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. I'm going to take a scooter and I'm going to take it over the Williamsburg Bridge. And that's actually, I would recommend you guys go on my YouTube page, because I actually did a video about me on my scooter across Williamsburg Bridge. Was one of my video work. It was, I think it was a lot of fun, but you could see like there's a lot of people who take the walking path and the bike path to cross the river. And so I think things like that, where people can see that there's options, I think people are going to get into it. And the reason why I like a scooter a lot better than city bike is because I wear a skirt to work. And when you're pedaling a city bike, and New York has hills, surprisingly enough, especially if you're going up the hill and on the bridge, you know, it's quite steep. And you're in the middle of summer, you're sweating, you're wearing a skirt. Like, to me, city bike is just not a good option, because I'm coming to the office kind of like sweaty and just gross. Whereas a scooter, I'm standing up, I'm doing no work, I'm just literally using my throttle, like my thumb for the accelerator and like the other one for the brake. And I show up to work with my backpack, you know, my scooter shoes, and I can change. I have my helmet, which I got this little sparkle, like, you know, flare kind of helmet. And, you know, for me, it makes sense.
Sparkly.
Yeah, it's called Black Gloss Glitter. It's actually a skater helmet from California. But again, because my scooter group, they're the ones who gave me this idea, and I went online and I bought it. So, and then my little light back here, I got at Home Depot. So this is, actually it's dying now, but this is like a flasher for safety. So yeah, I mean, I think people kind of embrace the culture. I've even said this to my friends who are in fashion here in New York. I'm like, you're gonna see new trends happening. Like, I saw some guy with Prada loafers on a scooter. Like, you need some sort of like kind of malleable, like soccer shoe almost, you know, that has flexibility, no shoelaces, you know, something where you can feel like the kind of bed of the scooter. And you're gonna see more kind of form flex kind of like pants. You're gonna see more like stylish backpacks, you know, kind of bright color jackets so you can be visible. I mean, there's a lot of things I think that fashion can embrace, you know, as a scooter culture, and as I like to call it, micro mobility culture, really kind of take off.
And let me ask you this though. So among the many this will help are the city's delivery people and New Yorkers who will be hesitant to ride public transportation. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, unfortunately, New York's been hard hit by coronavirus. I mean, you and I both know that. You're in Astoria, I'm here in Midtown. You know, the city's been brought to its knees. We have a lot of people we know who are sick. Thankfully, you know, they're okay. But, you know, people, it's changed the way New Yorkers kind of live their life, and especially the subways. I mean, luckily now they're sanitizing them a lot, but people are still scared. And, you know, if and when we really start coming back to work in droves and kind of mass amount of people, I think people are really going to have in the back of their mind that, you know, I don't feel safe. So, you know, one of the positives that can come out of this, you know, is the scooter kind of culture, I think, because people are going to want to be on, you know, outside, away from the crowds. We have the bike lanes. You know, there's more bike lanes that the city's building now. I think they've, what was it, 100 extra miles? I could be wrong, but they are really expanding the number of bike lanes now, as well. So I think it's a nice confluence of events. Like, people are going to stop considering mass transit in the sense of being in crowds, and they're going to want more freedoms, and scooters or bikes or whatever it is are going to be the answer. One thing I've said, which you know, I tend to call these things sometimes. I've called the renewable energy trends back in the early 2000s. You know, I've called the scooter kind of evolution. This is what I'm calling. And people laugh at me, but you can laugh all you want. I really think we're going to have electric chairs. Like, not necessarily wheelchairs, but there's going to be people who just want to sit, and this chair is going to be motorized, and we're going to use them in the bike lanes. Or it's going to be like electric golf carts, or some sort of like fungibility of like smaller, more micro mobility kind of electric powered options that are more kind of individual. So, you know, I think if it's not scooters, it's going to be something else. And like, you're seeing these electric unicycles all over the place now, these one wheels that these guys are riding, which you didn't even see a year ago. It's like taking the wheel of a motorcycle and you straddle it with your 2 feet. You know, you're going to see a lot more innovation happening, and it's all going to be predicated on the battery technology and charging.
Okay, Sara, you're going to be on the record for the electric Shares, okay? I'll put you down for that. And we'll revisit it. Tell the audience about your platform, Embolden Adventures.
Sure, thank you. Well, Embolden Adventures is a travel content site, podcast show, and it's a chance to encourage and embolden people to see the world. So I've traveled all over. I'm a big scuba diver. I go all over the world. I love to travel. And for me, it's a way to kind of convey, these experiences to others. And, as I mentioned, I'm thinking about getting a trip for potentially, my e-ride group. I've done some scooter events, actually. We did a Halloween event downtown. We rode around Manhattan. We saw like the Brooklyn Bridge and, other kind of points of interest in New York City on scooter and electric bike. I've done food tours around New York City. Carl, you were part of that. That was a lot of fun. We crowned the winner of the best pizza in New York and therefore the world. So, Embolden Adventures is a way to get people together through travel. Locally here in New York City, but also more broadly throughout the United States and beyond. So stay tuned. I have a few, group trips up my sleeve, including the Himalayas, which would be Bhutan, Nepal, and Tibet, and a few others as well. So that's what I'm hoping to do. I've put some YouTube content online. I just came back from a 5-week trip spanning the globe. I went to, 3 continents and maybe 4 countries. I went from Morocco to the Amazon rainforest in Peru to do ayahuasca ceremonies, which was really incredible. And then from there we went to southern Peru and the Andes Mountains into Bolivia, which was our own ancient alien tour. So stay tuned for more. I have more content to post about that, but I definitely put some material up on YouTube as well, and you can see if this looks familiar. This was the background to that YouTube ayahuasca chronicles that I put up there. So that's what Embolden Adventures is about: to embolden people, to embolden you to see the world and to experience, something you may not have experienced before.
And give us your website and your Instagram so we can go visit you.
Sure, thank you. It's www.emboldenadventures, EMBOLDEN, emboldenadventures.com. I just redid the website, so I hope you like it. And Instagram, it's @emboldenadventures.
Okay.
And I'm on Facebook as well. So.
And Facebook. Those links will be in the description of this as well, in case you missed that. Sara, thank you so much for taking time to break this down.
It's great to see you virtually. I hope to see you in person soon when we start to get out of our apartments after Corona. So
That's right. Phase 3 is coming soon.